Hello and welcome. In the previous video we discussed about domain of a function. This video we shall discuss about range of a function. If we consider a function as a box which takes the input and produces output f of x according to a definite rule. For example, f of x is equal to x plus 2, where it takes the input x and adds 2 to it. So any value of the x, any value of the x which produces any value of the x which produces finite or a defined output, and that x value comes under the domain, so in fact domain is a set of values, a set of values set of all values which produces which produces finite output finite outputs. For example, if f of x is equal to 1 by x minus 2, if you put x is equal to 2, f of 2 is actually f of 2 is 1 by 2 minus 2, which is 1 by 0, which is undefined. So for this function 2 does not come to the domain, except 2 all values will produce the finite output. So the domain of this function is the domain of this function is all the real numbers except 2. So if you take any value inside the domain and plug it into the function f of x, this will produce a finite output. If you take any value outside the domain and you plug in into this function, then this function will not give you any finite value or defined value. This will not give you finite value. So such x value does not come to the domain. So if all the valid inputs to the function is called domains, then what about set of set of what about what about set of all values, set of all output values, that is f of x, which were produced, set of all output values produced with valid inputs. This we have a name for this, and this is called the range of the function. The range of the function. So any value inside the domain, if it is plugged into this function, it will produce output, and this output will also have boundaries, and this output boundary is called the range of the function. Let us take an example to understand this better. Let us take f of x. F of x is equal to x square. So let us find the domain first for this function. Domain is uh, on the observation we can say no value of x will produce undefined values. So you can take any values of real number. If it is squared, then it is always a finite value. So domain is complete real number. So any number you can take in the real number, or I can write minus infinity to plus infinity. You take any number, this will produce finite value. let us plot this. Let us plot this function and see what are the values you get. If you put x is equal to 0, f of 0 is 0 square, which is 0. So f of 0 is like 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. -1, -2, -3, and so on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So here f of 0 is 0. f of 1, f of 1, f of 1 is f of 1, f of 1 is 1 square, which is 1. So at 1 it is 1. f of -1, f of -1 is also 1, because -1 square is 1. So at -1 it is 1. Similarly, if you put f of 2 is 2 square, which is 4. So at 2 it is 4. f of -2 is also 4, because -2 square is 4. So if you graph this, you get a parabola like this. Now, one thing we can observe here is, even if x is negative, f of x is positive. f of x is f of x is positive, because we are squaring every number. So the value of f of x is always positive. So the value of f of x, we call it as range. So here f of x is always a positive value. You can see here it is a positive value, and this is called the range of this function. So range of this function is f of x f of x f of x is greater than or equal to 0. It is positive. Or you can say f of x is a set of values belonging to real number, such that f of x is f of f of x is positive. Or you can also write it as f of x, the range is 0 to infinity. So one thing you have to remember, the domain, if you want to check the domain, you check in the x-axis, check in the x-axis. So here you can see minus infinity to plus infinity, you can take any values that will produce finite values of f of x. So the domain is minus infinity to plus infinity. To check the range, you always check with the y-axis. So here the curve starts from 0 and it goes up till infinity. So the range is, to check the range, you always check with y-axis, and this is actually 0 is included, 0 to infinity. So this is about range. The next coming videos we shall solve problems on domain and range. Thank you.